Back here in the final segment of Jones and Company today, and we have Mr. Stephen Thompson, who is the National Anti-Money Laundering Coordinator for the Bahamas. I hope I get the title right. And remaining with us, we have Calvin Wilson and Mr. Shadrach Harona. Attorney General Alison Maynard Gibson has left us, and we were so delighted to have her here today. But Mr. Thompson, since you are, what is your role really in the country, in the Bahamas?
First of all, Mr. Jones, thank you very much for having me here. And I wish to commend you, sir, for the great work you're doing in communications generally in the Bahamas.
Thank you.
The Bahamas, as one of the founding members of the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, recognize the importance of us being a responsible member of that organization. We look at it from the perspective that financial services is the second pillar of our economy in the Bahamas, and we know that certainly a well-regulated financial services sector is important to reputation. Obviously, we spoke over and over earlier about reputation, and so we try to maintain that reputation by ensuring that our financial services sector is properly regulated. Properly regulated, meaning that we are, to the extent possible, in compliance with the Financial Action Task Force's 40 recommendations on anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism.
Good. And your role in the Bahamas as the national coordinator is to ensure that we are compliant?
In a general sense, to be more specific, I was asked to serve as someone who will coordinate the initiatives relative to anti-money laundering. We can look at the phrase connecting the dots. What I have been asked to do is to ensure that there's proper collaboration between the regulatory framework, the private sector, and transform and transpose that information to the policymakers to ensure that all of us are on the same page, so to speak.
Our two guests here from Mr. Wilson from Trinidad and Mr. Harona out of the UK, they do not know when we say web shops. They didn't understand what we meant by web shops, but it is said, gentlemen, that now that you know, since we spoke during the commercial break, that web shop gaming would perhaps render countries in the region, put them at risk for non-compliance. In Haiti the other day, I saw a number of illegal web shops as well as legal ones. And there are other jurisdictions in the Caribbean where you have these cyber cafes. And I just wonder the extent to which they would perhaps be, in a way, unsuitable for the purpose of your task force in having the region to comply to these 40 recommendations.
Mr. Jones, I wish to say that in terms of the anti-money laundering framework in the Bahamas, we have just come out of what is called the third round. We had first, second, and the third round of mutual evaluation, meaning assessment of our level of compliance with the global anti-money laundering standards. We completed that third round. What we are doing is preparing for the fourth round. The FATF, Financial Action Task Force, revised its recommendations recently, and certainly we need to make some adjustments. One of the revisions to the FATF's recommendation is for each country, not just in the region, globally, that has a financial services sector, to properly assess the money laundering risks within those countries. That is recommendation 1. Recommendation 2, and I'm not going through all 40, recommendation 2 is that each country should also coordinate its anti-money laundering framework. The Bahamas is in the process of doing both of those. My appointment as national coordinator, we are fulfilling that recommendation. The next step in terms of the national risk assessment the Bahamas is just about to undertake a national risk assessment, meaning that we will look at the entire country and to determine where money laundering risks lie and determine what framework we need to put in place to mitigate or manage those risks. Fortunately, we've been at this for quite a few years now, and most of the money laundering risks we are either aware of and have a framework in place. The new nuances, one of which you mentioned, we will properly assess those activities, determine the level of money laundering risk, and then put the framework in place to deal with those risks.
Mrs. Wilson, I see why you spoke so highly of Mr. Thompson.
Living proof. Living proof.
Yes, and so you're working in conjunction with the Caribbean Action Task Force.
Yes, not only that, Mr. Jones, I also had the privilege to serve as an assessor. The point was made earlier that persons within the Caribbean we have a peer review process where a team of persons from each Caribbean jurisdiction would visit another jurisdiction and assess their level. And so we'll be talking about parity across the region. I had the great fortune of serving as an assessor, not only in the third round, I've also been prepared to assess countries under the new standards for the fourth round. And
FATF countries?
Not FATF countries.
Just Caribbean countries?
Caribbean countries,
Okay.
yes, at this point.
Okay.
There may be an opportunity later on for jurisdictions in the Caribbean to be part of the teams which will assess FATF members.
So there would be a sort of cross-fertilization in anti-money laundering in the world, eh?
Yep.
Because we have examples where FATF member countries have sent examiners to our countries. We participated to some degree in FATF members, as the examinations of FATF members, and we've been asked from afar, as far as Asia, whether we have because of the expertise in the international financial services sector, whether we have examiners to send further abroad. So it's good news for the region. And today, we had you asked before about the outcome of the conference this week, but we had a spectacular outcome this week because today, your Prime Minister said he will take up the mantle of being the patron of the organization.
Very good.
And if we weren't a solid, properly functioning organization, I don't think that the Prime Minister would have taken up the challenge to represent us across the world.
Thank you so very much.
If I may add just one thing to that very quickly, what was significant about this event that ended today is that the Prime Minister gave his full endorsement, and one of the challenges throughout the region is political will. Those countries which have not done well in terms of anti-money laundering, a lot of it had to do with the absence of political will. We have that in the Bahamas.
Very good. On that point, we bring our program to an end. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Is this your first time to the Bahamas?
No, this is the second time.
Oh, very good.
So it's like coming back home.
Very good. I'm glad to hear that. And
Yes.
Mr. Wilson, you have a Bahamian name, so thank you so very much. Thank you so very much, Mr. Thompson. And we thank the Attorney General for being here as well. Thank you for watching and listening to our program today. Good evening, everyone.